chose to wear, what their style was. That to me really fascinates me more than anything, because I like to see what people actually chose to wear, not what like the catalogs and the fashion magazines were pushing, but what people chose to wear for themselves, their personal style, everything else. So it really helps me date things and also get an idea of where a certain garment would have been worn and how it would have been worn, right? It gives you really that impression. So I collect a lot of paper ephemera. It's basically what my house is full of. It's just bookshelves. That's all I have. Bookshelves and clothing. So I find that very useful. I haven't found enough on hair work, but I do have some earlier stuff that talks about it, which I didn't think to bring today. But
well, was it catalog images or fashion?
Yeah, because I have some early like Victorian fashion magazines and stuff. So
that have hair.
I believe so.
Yeah,
it's been a while.
That's interesting. So
yeah.
It's something that would it have been? Do you know if it would have been expensive or?
It depends on what jeweler was making it. So one thing that I was reading about last night is that originally it was done by, it was a specific like type of, it was wig makers. It was like wig makers because that became, the trend for that became less and less popular, so they moved into working with hair jewelry. And they would work with like high-end jewelers, so it was actually mostly for the wealthy to have this stuff made. But as time went on and people learned how to make it themselves, and people, I think the one article was saying it was like women in Sweden would do them at home, and they didn't have money for like the gold and the embellishments and everything else, so they actually used like wooden beads and stuff like that to embellish the pieces. So it depended. It became kind of a craft by the end, or like in the Victorian era. So by that point, it was like a craft that women learned, so people were doing it in their spare time. Some women would do it for money, and that was actually something that they could do for work and things like that.
Interesting, because I know for some of the things that we have too, Victorian women and Edwardian women's hairstyles were very large. So in order to get those hairstyles, they often used rats, which were, so you will see, I've got an example here of a hair receiver. So it looks like a little porcelain, and this is, you would get a set like this, you'd have a little powder box, but you'd also have a receiver like this, which is porcelain, and it's got a hole in the top, which we'll showcase a little closer later. But what you would do is after you brush your hair and you have all the extra, you'd put it into the receiver at the top and just save some of your hair. And then you would be able to create a rat from that, which is just a little clump of hair that you could then put in on top of your head and sort of build your hairstyle around it, and it would give volume. So fake hair made from real hair back in the day. And the hairstyles are very complex. I've seen beautiful illustrations. We have some lovely examples of like hair curlers and tongs and things from the period that women would have used. Very easy to burn your hair with some of these pieces. Like this is a metal one that just gets heated up, so you have to be, I know that there's the part in Little Women where hair gets burnt, so it did happen.
How many fires were started with those?
Yeah, and it seemed like people were, they had, different ways of using their hair, not only for creating rats and jewelry, but also pincushions, which you've got one. I don't know that yours is
it's not filled with hair, but it definitely has hair as the embellishment on top of it.
Yeah, and there's pincushions that got made, or small pillows, because I guess pincushions that had hair in them actually preserve the pin a little better, because the oils in the hair within the pincushion would be good for the pins. So very interesting how it was used back then.
Yeah, 100%.
So maybe should we get some closer looks at what you brought, because it's gorgeous to see. Great, so you can talk maybe a little bit about that main piece.
Sure, I'm gonna put gloves on while I hold this stuff too. That's probably a good idea. So we can start with the pin cushion, because I feel like I've mentioned it the most. So it's like a weird little like flapper woman. So it's got a cute face. It's definitely a homemade thing. These were the pins that were in it when I bought it. So you can tell that it's human hair along the top. She's seen better days. I plan to restore her at some point, but I keep her safe in the meantime. This is the framed hair work that we were talking about. So this is actually really one of the smallest examples I've ever seen of it. I was very fortunate to find it at one of the local antique fairs. I kind of freaked out. It was my favorite thing I found that day, even though I found other cool stuff, but I'd never seen one so small. Usually they're like big wreaths that kind of go like this, and they can be quite large. I watched a show once that just sold oddities. Like it was like a show just about oddities, and there was one where it was hair work. It was like as tall as it was like 5 feet tall, and it was a building.
Oh my
They
gosh.
made the shape of like a building out of it. It was like so unusual.
Interesting.
So these are the examples of the postcards. I have mine framed to try to keep the hair safe. All of the ones that Sarah has are in casing, so it might be a little bit reflective, but it's kind of the only way to keep them safe. This is my favorite one with the little cherries in her mouth. It's so, so cute. So this would be that ring that we were talking about, where if you look very closely, it has hair work within there. So it's very fine. Like that one would have taken a lot of time. And then it goes nearly all the way around, and then it has this. Usually this would have been engraved with something. This one's not. So it's not, like I'm not able to really do much research on who this belonged to or anything, unfortunately, which would have been cool. Then these are kind of my as-is pieces that I've just found along the way. This would have been in a locket at some point. And then this one is a watch fob. So this would have been something, like I said, that would have been given by like a girlfriend or a wife. So this one's kind of falling apart, but I had to save it because that's the kind of person I am. This would be a better example of a watch fob. So there would have been a little piece that, or I guess the watch would